let's start today with opening statements. They were made in Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial in New York City. The prosecution also called its first witness the former publisher of the National Enquirer. His name is David Pecker. And he claims that Trump tried to have the story of his affair with porn star Stormy Daniels killed. The term we've heard by now, we've all learned about it. It's called catch and kill. So was this a win for the prosecution today, or was it just more of the same? I want to bring in our all-star panel. We've got defense attorney Mark Geragos, attorney Misty Marris, and Trump's former acting White House chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney. It's good to see you all. Misty, I want to start with you. Really, for the first time today, we had a chance to hear both sides lay out their arguments. And I guess I was just waiting for some new information. And it seemed, Misty, like the same buzzwords we've heard over and over again: election fraud, influencing the election. I didn't feel like there were really a lot of specifics in the openings. Misty, what did you think? I mean, were you expecting more meat on the bones?
So from the prosecution perspective, Brian, keep in mind, this case is about falsifying business records. And in order for this to be a felony, that has to be in furtherance of either covering up another crime or in furtherance of committing another crime. So the question is, from the prosecutors, what is the other crime? So they used this word election fraud, and they said that was this broad conspiracy to catch and kill these stories, and that this was done through illegal expenditures. So presumably that means there's going to be an argument that these were campaign finance violations. But there wasn't a lot of specificity in the opening about what this other crime is, that this falsification of business records was intended to cover up. And Brian, that intent, that piece of it, is critical to the prosecution's case. So I didn't see a lot of color on that point, which is very, very crucial for the prosecution to be successful and prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt.
What do you think, Mark? I mean, the defense spent a lot of time today pointing out that a lot of the stuff that the jury is going to hear, yes, it's negative, the NDAs, the other juicy stuff, but saying, look, this stuff isn't necessarily illegal. I mean, what did you think of the defense's opening, Mark?
Well, the defense, I think, has got a fair point here, because the part of what they are doing is they're prosecuting him under this theory, him being the former president, that if you believe them, that his intent was to cover up, to catch and kill, to use the expression, these negative stories about him so that the voters would not know it going into the election. And the response to that is, well, obviously every president in the last 100 years, save maybe Jimmy Carter, has had some kind of a scandal or something they don't want out there. And that's number one. Number two is, was his intent to mislead the voters, or was his intent because he didn't want Melania to find out? And, you know, they didn't really deal with that.
Yeah, how can they prove that the intent was election interference? I thought the same thing today. You know, we can't watch it. There's no TV cameras. But as we were getting the quotes coming out, I mean, maybe he just didn't want Melania to know. Maybe he didn't want the world to know. Even if he wasn't running for president, Mark, he may have done the same thing, right?
Well, this is the point, I think, where the defense is going to go. They have not, I understand, have not cross-examined David Pecker yet. David Pecker was at National Enquirer, was a supervisory position. I think they're going to cross-examine him. They're going to say, was this something that he was doing prior to 2015, prior to 2014? If they can show instances where he was doing this prior to 2014, where he wasn't a candidate, where the inference is that he just didn't want negative stories, that completely undercuts, in a criminal case beyond a reasonable doubt, the idea that this interpretation is only for the election. If, you know, part of the definition of reasonable doubt is two reasonable interpretations, one that points towards innocence, you must adopt that interpretation.
Mick, it's hard to imagine the former president just sitting in this courtroom all day long. He has to sit there, no cell phone. He's mentioned before that it's very, very cold. He can't talk. I mean, he's a guy who's used to being in control, and he's totally out of control in this situation. I mean, you knew the president very well. What do you think is going through his mind as he sits in court all day, Mick?
Oh, I think he hates it, Brian. I mean, he's not a sit, at the table for 8 or 10 hours kind of guy. He's a very hyperkinetic sort of personality. That being said, he understands a couple things. First of all, the jury is watching him at all times. And if he overreacts to something, they'll pay attention to that. If you've ever been in a trial, the jury actually watches the accused. They watch the parties very, very closely. And Trump will know that. But he also knows this. He also knows that at the end of every day, or at the end of every break, even when he goes out for lunch, he's getting free media time, free media attention. This is the lead story right now on our news coverage tonight, not whatever Joe Biden did tonight. And that's what Donald Trump is really, really good at. So while he hates doing it on a minute-by-minute, day-by-day basis, he understands this is a tremendous opportunity for him politically, and you've seen him take full political advantage of it from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it's interesting, too, the fact that there are no cameras in the courtroom, Mick. It almost, makes when he comes out and addresses the media even more of a spectacle in a moment, because the media doesn't have video from the entire day. You've just got quotes coming out. So they really reuse the Trump sound bites over and over again. There's video of him right there walking out of court. So, that kind of plays in his favor, it seems.
It does. He recognizes that, look, either I can tell my story or someone else can tell my story for me. And my guess is if someone else is telling my story, they're not going to make me look very good. So Donald Trump is grasping onto these opportunities to spin his own, to deliver his own spin on what this trial is about. By the way, it is by far the weakest of the 4 criminal charges against him. I mean, even Democrats tend to admit that. So he's going to use that to his full advantage. Again, he doesn't like being there, but as long as he's there, he's going to make the best use of it.
Okay, so the first witness, Misty, Pecker, it's all about this, whether or not the story was killed. He only got to testify for about 30 minutes today. He's going to be on the stand all day tomorrow, we presume. You think this is a big part of the case, Misty? I mean, how important is his testimony? It seems pretty pivotal.
It's very important. And the reason is the jury really has to understand what this catch and kill scheme is. And in order to do so, David Pecker is going to lay that foundation, explain what happened. And also, this again goes to the issue of the prosecution having to prove that Donald Trump had an intent to squash these stories for the purposes of the election, which would violate election laws. That's really going to be the hurdle here, because the squashing of the stories on their own, signing an NDA, paying Stormy Daniels money, those things are not illegal on their face. So the whole context surrounding this payment, when it was made, why it was made, which presumably is going to be something David Pecker can testify to, is the only way the prosecution is going to be able to get into Donald Trump's head, to get it over the net and fulfill their burden to prove that this wasn't just a run-of-the-mill payment, as Mark said, mixed motives. There's lots of reasons to kill these stories: your reputation, your businesses, your family, but that it was something more and something very, very specific to the election.
All right, so we had Pecker today. He's going to continue tomorrow. Mark, what do you think about Stormy Daniels? Should we expect to see her take the stand?
I don't see how there's any way they don't call both Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen. I think they have to. I think they led with Pecker for a reason. Pecker did not get convicted. I believe he had a deferred prosecution agreement, and what that means is that that's not technically a conviction. They may be able to cross-examine on that, but at the end of the day, that's going to be fodder for the defense, and I believe they think that he's going to be able to tell this story because he was a confidant and he doesn't carry a lot of the baggage that that Michael Cohen may, or that, remember, Michael Cohen has got a tremendous amount of information that SDNY dropped on the Manhattan DA's office, if you believe what's being reported, at the last minute. And so there's probably a reason why that they were given, the defense was given a 30-day continuance at least, even though they wanted more, is because they were going through what they have characterized as a treasure trove of information to cross-examine on. You don't want to start with that in front of a jury. You want somebody who's going to be a little bit more of a truth teller, a little bit more of your North Star to lead you through the theory.
You think Trump could take the stand, Mark?
Absolutely. I think he's already, I find it hard to believe that he came out already and said he was going to, because as Misty will tell you, the last thing you want to do is make that decision before the prosecution rests their case. And I've tried mightily in many, many cases to tackle my client when they want to tell their story. But I don't think you could stop him at this point. I think he's going to get up there and he's going to tell his story.
I see you shaking your head,
what?
Mulvaney. Real quick, I want to see what Mick thinks. Mick, I mean, you know the president. I mean, why are you shaking your head no?
Well, everything that Mark just said in terms of the person dynamics is right. So many defendants want to go up and tell their story because they feel like if they tell their story, it will sort of, inoculate them against any charges and prove their innocence. But most trial lawyers know, and I never practiced criminal law, but I did a lot of civil law, that that doesn't happen. You don't let a criminal defendant talk because can only typically work in one direction. The only reason a criminal defendant typically gives testimony is if his team thinks he's going to be convicted otherwise.
But he talks outside the courthouse every day. I mean, he talks all the time. He loves to talk. Are they going to really be able to stop him, you think?
But that's politics. That's not under oath in a courtroom when the possible downside is going to jail. So I fully expect him to say he's going to testify. I would be stunned if he testifies. There's no reason to. This goes back to my conversations with him about the first impeachment. Mr. President, they have nothing on you. Nothing. Everything we did was legal. As long as you just, keep quiet and don't screw this up, you will walk from this. And my guess is that's the exact same thing his team is telling him now.
What do you think, Misty? Last word to you.
All right. Here it is, Brian.
Yeah.
I'm going to make an early prediction. He's going to say that he wanted to testify. He was planning on testifying, but the results of today's Sandoval hearing, where the judge made a decision to allow a lot in on cross-examination, including E. Jean Carroll, the Attorney General's civil fraud results, and other issues relating to his violations of the gag order, stifled him and made it so he cannot testify. That is what I predict hearing when the time comes for whether or not he takes the stand.
And you bring up the gag order. That's going to be tomorrow morning. That's the first thing that they're going to discuss is whether or not he's already violated the gag order, whether he could face fines, eventually even jail time. So that's going to be interesting. Mick Mulvaney, Mark Garagos, thank you so much. Misty Marris, stick around. We're going to see you a little later. I want to ask you more about what you think is going on with this crazy Oklahoma-Kansas murder mystery. That update in a second. But I'll talk to you guys soon, Mick and Mark. Thank you for coming on. After